screen. And hopefully that's now visible to people. So yes, I am a trainee patent attorney at Marks & Clark, and we're an intellectual property firm. And this presentation is on careers in intellectual property, which I'll just abbreviate to IP. And I put in mostly patents here because although I'm a trainee patent attorney and I'll basically only be talking about patents, if you're interested in other intellectual property careers, trademarks or anything else, feel free to ask me at the end. So this is really just a prompt for that. So the structure of this, I'm going to talk about kind of my journey, what I did before this, and then I'll go on to what a patent and indeed a patent attorney is, and also talk about the pros and cons of the job. So I started at the University of York. This was for my Masters of Physics degree. And I started doing a little bit of photonics here, mostly just for my master's project, making a silicon or like a doped silicon bolometer. I spent a year at the University of San Diego in California. That was quite nice. And subsequent to that, I started at the University of St Andrews in the synthetic optics group. My supervisor was Professor Andrea De Falco. And yes, as was said in the very nice introduction, I worked on holographic metasurfaces. So just to kind of clarify what I mean by the metasurface aspect in particular, like extremely thin surfaces, and I use them for particular photonic effects, in particular holograms. So these are tiny nanorods, they're 200 nanometers long, 75 nanometers wide, oriented in all sorts of different angles that you can use to dephase light by amounts that you choose. And if you correctly engineer the phases of your hologram, you can get pretty images. So these are just some papers and some of the work that I was doing on this. I did some stuff in the visible wavelength range. This is here. I did a lot of flexible things, so you can probably see this is not on a flat surface. This was a cover that I made that I was quite pleased with for this kind of flexible work. And then this is more flexible work, but this time in the millimeter wavelength range. So that's just to give you an idea of what kind of stuff I was doing in my PhD and the kind of expertise that I had going along. And during my PhD, I had the good fortune to come up with, in addition, like in collaboration with my supervisor, an idea for a patent application. So this is the PCT phase, like the international application phase of the patent application that I applied for. And this was actually with Marks & Clark, who are my current employer. And when doing this, I actually quite enjoyed the whole process. It felt kind of non-esoteric, like it was actually applied to a thing. The idea was to spin this off into a product that we could either sell or license to people in the future. I found the whole thing quite exciting. And so I decided to take a bit of a chance, and I was kind of thinking I'd leave academia anyway. There were a few things that I didn't think fit too well for me in academia. So I went into patent law. And yeah, so I've now moved to Edinburgh, and this is just, as I like my bio on the website or whatever at Marks & Clark. So I'll just briefly go over what a patent attorney is. So first and foremost, you are a STEM professional. It's a job that requires a good deal of technical expertise, which you'll all have, yes, from your studies and PhDs and such. It's also a specialist legal professional, and yeah, it's an unusual area of law. It's quite a small profession, and yeah, very specialized, I guess. And you're representing clients at patent offices and advising on intellectual property matters. And I was pleased to hear that Lloyd earlier was talking about intellectual property as well. So what is a patent? It is a legal document. It's a monopoly right granted by the state for an idea that is, and these are just some of the criteria, but these are the big three: new, inventive, and industrially applicable. And hopefully this will just be helpful for people who are possibly thinking of applying for a patent or need to understand the system. It's also a negative right. So it doesn't enable you to practice an invention. It enables you to stop someone else doing or like using your invention, be it a method or an apparatus. So why they exist in the first place, they provide an incentive for people to do clever, inventive, and useful things. So I'm sure a lot of you will have sunk or put a lot of time into your effort, into your jobs, doing research, coming up with all sorts of clever things. And this takes time and it takes money. And it's nice if people are able to recoup this investment, because if they can't, they won't do it. So it provides some incentive for that. It enables different business models where instead of having to manufacture everything yourself, you can instead come up with the ideas, and then you can sell these on like the ideas by licensing your patent onto other companies. And for a lot of, especially early stage companies, it's the only real asset they have, and it's how they get funding, either applying for grants or like angel investors or venture capital or whatever it happens to be. And the flip side, or the side why it's, as well as being good for the inventors, it's good for society in general, it's time limited. So after 20 years, it's normally 20 years, anyone is able to use the invention, and it was published after, well, normally 18 months. So anyone can see how it works and really understand it. And you have to write it in such a way that the skilled person could understand what's happening and practice the invention. So I thought it would be useful to say what I actually do in my day-to-day. And as you can kind of see by these arrows here, this is ordered from what I do most frequently down to what I do least frequently. This would change throughout my career because there are some things here that happen more as you get more senior. But I spend a good deal of my time responding to patent examiners. An examiner will give me a whole load of objections, sometimes formal objections, sometimes about whether or not this thing is an invention. I spend a reasonable amount of time preparing patent applications and also research disclosures, so writing something from scratch. Meeting inventors is a key part, and a part that I've really enjoyed. Obviously, this is all virtual at the moment. There's business development type stuff, which could be running webinars, it could be writing articles, it could be attending conferences, and I've done a reasonable amount of all of that. And then you get onto the stuff that I've not really done yet, because it happens more when you're more senior, but this may be actually attending hearings or giving commercial and strategic business advice. So I'll talk about the kind of pros and cons of being a patent attorney now. So one of the nice things is if you like learning and you like kind of improving your knowledge of the world, you're always on the forefront of technology just by the virtue of what a patent is. It has to be new. So it's an excellent way to always be on that forefront, which was quite important for me. It's a good use of your STEM degree. So I use my physics training and indeed the soft skills that I learned in my PhD, things like how to write, how to communicate, that kind of thing, all of the time. And I would say it's really fundamental. And if you like reading, writing, and analysis, it's a good way to be able to do those things, because that is a good part of the job. Other sides, there is a good earning potential, and there's like a clear career ladder, and that's quite a nice thing to have, and you gain a professional qualification from doing it, which gives you a bit of job security and all that kind of thing. You work quite independently, which is nice if you don't want someone over your shoulder the whole time. But you do have good backup. So if I'm ever struggling with something, there are many people I can call to help sort that out. And it's been extremely handy that you can do it well from home, especially at the moment. So here are some of the more negative sides. So there's a decent amount of training involved, at least 4 years really, and this involves multiple exams. So I've just done the first set of those. It's quite deadline driven. This could be good or bad depending on your personality. and it's a lot of short-term deadlines. With academia, I found you'd often have a deadline, but it would be in kind of 3 years' time, whereas a lot of my deadlines are 2 weeks or 1 week, that kind of thing. And it's a desk job, which, again, depending on your personality, is good or bad. But if you want to be in a lab, mixing chemicals or spraying lithographic solvents or whatever, you won't be able to do so much of that. So here are just some resources. I assume this can be forwarded to, this presentation can be forwarded to people afterwards, where you can find out a little bit more about intellectual property and being a patent attorney. And yeah, I'd be delighted to take any questions, and I've also got my contact details if anyone wants to find me on LinkedIn or send an email or phone or anything else. Obviously don't turn up to the office at the moment, but we'll be back at some point. So that's the end of my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, James, for this great presentation. Yeah, I didn't
Thank you very much.
That a patent attorney, so it was really great to know a bit more about this job. So just checking the Q&A session. So yeah, we don't have question at the moment, but I have a question. So how did you start applying from, I mean, when did you know that's what you wanted to do? Once you applied for your own patents, you knew that that was a field you wanted to go for? Was it then hard to apply for a job over there, or was it quite straightforward and then you have to take the training on?
I mean, it wasn't an immediate decision for me from like filing the patent to deciding to apply for it, because I think I did that probably 8-9 months before I applied. And it was more a kind of gradual realization of time. I think there were multiple things I did that made my life a lot easier applying. And one of those is that I spoke to a lot of people who do the job. I attended open days. And I think that in combination with having applied for a patent was all really helpful. And they're things that I would advise people to do if you're interested in this field or really any other field, is speaking to people who do the job. It seems to go down very favorably with employers.
And how much time did it take for your patent when you were a PhD to be like approved? How much time does it take?
Well, it's still pending. It's very variable how long a patent application takes before it's granted. Yeah, so I'd think about kind of 4 years as a ballpark figure.
Okay. Are there any skills that you've unexpectedly found useful in your career?
I mean, this one's not necessarily unexpected, but being able to write well has been extremely helpful. And like I'm improving my writing all the time, but my PhD is really where I learned to write, and that just comes up constantly, essentially, and has been extremely helpful. And yeah, I think the soft skills have been really helpful in general, like being comfortable communicating with people and so on. But quite frequently, something comes up where I'd read about it on the periphery and something, you know, just reading around on something that I'm interested in, and then an application just happens to come on my desk for that. There was a time I was reading something about knee prostheses, and then I got a patent application concerning a knee prosthesis. So yeah, no matter how far away it's from your technical expertise, something seems like it will come to your desk eventually.
Okay, and the customer you have, is it mainly academia or mainly industry, or like a good mix of the two?
So that will vary for different patent attorneys. For me personally, I would say probably 75% industry, 25% academia. Some firms will do essentially only industry, and some firms will have a little bit more academia, but yeah.
And so in your company, the range of topic you're going through, like, are you, in your position, are you just focused on optics and photonics and or a bit more? Like, are there like other people just like you, but like focusing on other research area, for example, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are certain things that I would not be able to work on at all because it's not my expertise. So one would be biomedicine type stuff, patenting drugs and so on. I have no experience in that, and I'd never be assigned to work on that. But generally, I would be, so like optics is my speciality, having done a photonics PhD, but biomechanics I've done a little bit of, and general kind of mechanical type inventions I think come fairly easily to physicists because you have spent a lot of time thinking and doing that kind of thing. But there's a whole chemical side that I never deal with, and the whole like kind of biological type side that I'll never work on. And there are specialists who take on those roles.
Okay. And how strict is the process for patents? Like, how much proof do you need to provide that your product does the job as expected when applying?
I mean, you can apply for a patent application without having a fully working prototype. The invention does have to be fully derivable from the specification. And there are a few kind of edge cases. So one of them would be from pharmacy, where you can't patent an absolutely huge group and then claim rights to everything in that group. You know, that could include kind of 10 to the 10 compounds or something, and expect that the skilled person could work the invention, because it could be, and it would depend on the application. Like, it might be okay depending on the circumstances, but too vague, too unhelpful, not an actual disclosure of the invention, in which case you couldn't use it. But that would depend. I've never come across in like a physics kind of application that the idea hadn't been, yeah. I mean, I probably wouldn't say that actually. Yeah.
Okay. So we have another question. When should you apply for a job? Are there certain intake dates, or is it continuous recruitment throughout the year?
I think if you're interested, the continuous recruitment approach is always worth doing. I know of multiple people who have joined as a trainee at unusual times of the year. So it's always worth putting in your CV, talking to someone, and making an application. It's going to depend a little bit on whether you're applying this year or hopefully in future years. Because I think recruitment for a lot of firms is a little different this year. So I think we're looking more for kind of late spring that we would be taking on people this year, potentially. Whereas normally it would be, I would suggest getting your application in kind of November, December.
Have you noticed like a decrease at the moment with working from home on applications?
Sorry, say that again?
Have you noticed a decrease in recruitment currently, and that's why you advise to wait spring?
No, I wouldn't advise to wait to spring. I think people, if you're interested, I think you should just put in an application. But I think a fair few firms may be postponing until spring.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I don't think we have other questions at the moment.